Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Deborah Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
In just a minute, our Morning Light panel will discuss the papal conclave happening right now in Rome.
And right now, you're going to be looking at a live shot of St. Peter's Square in Rome. Tens of thousands of people are gathered in anticipation of the announcement of the next pope. We will go live from the Vatican in just a moment. But first, here is a preview of what's coming up later in the show. She's a best-selling and award-winning Christian author. Laura Conaway fell in love with writing at a young age and has gone on to write inspirational romantic suspense books. Hear how her faith helps guide her readers towards the gospel.
Well, it is a process so foreign and mysterious to non-Catholics, but it still somehow stirs our imagination. The conclave, a process of selecting the leader of 1.4 billion Catholics. The electors, just 133 cardinals, sequestered, sworn to secrecy. The precinct, the walls of the 552-year-old Sistine Chapel. And for added drama, events happening underneath Michelangelo's cinematic depiction of the Last Judgment. 300 painted figures surrounding Jesus on the throne, condemning the lost to eternal judgment or promoting the saved to the glories of heaven. Catholics claim 266 popes since the first century. What drama.
Oh my goodness, yeah, but it's just a beautiful place for it all to happen.
It is indeed, yeah.
But one thing is clear for many American Christians, there's a move away from formality and denominational distinctions. With the rise in non-denominational churches, creeds, liturgies, and even hymns have given way to a less formal worship experience. Less ritual, more relational, less tradition, more help with being a Christian in real life. But in this world of change, what is really essential and what is optional for a church to be considered Christian? Are there any rules or guidelines?
Well, this is a day in Rome when it's the rules that are leading, and many of us looking at church don't want to have that level of formality. We'll see where we land on that. Well, Roman Catholic cardinals from around the world are in the second day of the conclave, and tens of thousands of faithful and curious are watching the specially installed chimney on the roof of the Sistine Chapel, waiting for that famous white smoke, the sign a new pope has been selected. But before we turn to the Morning Light panel, we want to get some perspective on the papal process from the host of NPR's All Things Considered, Scott Detrow. Scott arrived at the Vatican last weekend and has been interviewing cardinals and Catholic faithfuls, waiting to see all of the history unfold. Scott, welcome to Morning Light. Thanks for making the time this morning.
Jeff, it's good to be with you. It's funny to hear about less formal settings as I talk to you from St. Peter's Square, which is pretty formal. But we're waiting for the fourth ballot overall. We had black smoke earlier today, which means the cardinals voted twice this morning and we're not able to settle on a pope. This is the period where it starts to get real because Pope Benedict was elected on the fourth ballot in 2005. Pope Francis was elected on the fifth ballot in 2013. So we're at the point where in the last few conclaves, at least, they did decide on a pope. All we can do here is look up at the chimney and wait and see what happens.
Incredible, incredible. Can you give me a sense? I mean, there are so many tourists there. There are people that are obviously non-Catholics. There are the nuns. There are priests. There are those studying for the priesthood. And then you have all the main players. How much of this feels to you or feels to the people there like a spiritual process, and how much of it feels like ordinary history in a way?
It's an interesting mix of both, and I feel like you really felt the religious aspect of the ceremony yesterday when the conclave got underway. Began in the morning with a mass in St. Peter's Basilica, which you can see behind me, the big ornate, seat of the Catholic Church. That was public. There were thousands of people inside. Then it moved. Only the cardinals were there, but the Vatican showed a live video that was displayed on the big television monitors in the square behind. All of the cardinals processed into the Sistine Chapel, praying, chanting. They got into the chapel. They bowed before the altar. They all placed their hands on a Bible and swore an oath that they will do their best to vote for someone who they think is worthy of the seat of St. Peter, the head of the Catholic Church. And of course, as we all know, they also swore not to tell anybody what happened inside. Then you saw the proclamation in Latin of extra omnes, which means everybody out. And just to watch that and think this is something that's happened over and over again over the course of centuries was a moving experience.
There was a report, Scott, that in Politico that said that many of these cardinals had watched Conclave, and I'm wondering perhaps why they were watching Conclave. Is it because it is helping them get a sense of what the public would want? This is supposed to be a process that is inside the walls. It's you, the Holy Spirit, and the ballot in front of you. But why do you think that Conclave has almost played an outsized role in how we're looking at this process?
You know, I did do an interview with the author of Conclave, Robert Harris, as I prepare for this, because I was thinking, like, look, this is the entry point for a lot of people. This was a blockbuster movie. A lot of people saw it. We should hear what the author had to say. And he was telling me how much research he did. He did a lot of research, read a lot of books, talked to a lot of people, and he got the nuts and bolts details of how it works, right? Obviously, there's a lot of Hollywood drama in the movie, and I think a lot of people in the church would say, I'm not quite sure that was right. But in terms of the procedure, the walking the ballot up to the altar, putting it in an urn, praying, and then the way that three people count the ballot, they thread it through a needle, and then when they're done, they put it in, they light the ballots on fire, and it comes up from the chimney. It's just kind of behind my head right here. So all of the technical details were right.
That's fascinating.
I haven't seen Stanley Tucci yet, though. My eyes are open. I'm looking for him.
Tell me a little bit about when you talk to people around the Vatican City. Are they looking for? Is there a sense that the direction that Pope Francis was on, a more missional church, a church that was evangelical, that was essentially proselytizing again, not just relying on generations of Catholics to fill the pews? Is that the direction that this conclave is looking to go, or are they looking for theological purity? Are they looking back to Pope Benedict or Pope John Paul II, or is it some combination of all that?
You know, there are two interesting splits here. One is the one that's more political and the one that plays out more against global politics, and that's the idea of is the next pope somebody who's going to continue the way that Pope Francis really used his position to engage in the political arena, particularly when it came to pressuring governments to be more welcoming to migrants, right? I think that's one big question. Another interesting dynamic is, do they want somebody who can be an evangelizer, who can be a charismatic figure, who can grow the faith, or do they want somebody who can govern a massive government and global body? Because those are two very different skills. You know from your time in politics as I do, it's very hard to get both of those skills together. And to me, that's the interesting choice. We did an interview with a Canadian Jesuit cardinal, Cardinal Cherney, who talked about this idea of, in the past, the church thought about evangelizing to different continents. He said, we need to think of a digital continent. We need to think of somebody who can go out and be where younger people are on the internet, on social media, and really spread the church's message in that place. And I thought that was a really interesting way to frame it.
That is fascinating. 20 seconds. What is this? I know you're detached, you're a reporter, you're a professional, but what has this done to you? Have you allowed your emotions to come into play? Are you feeling anything as you see this process play out?
I am. I'm Catholic myself, and I can't help but think about my own faith watching this and covering this. I was able to visit Pope Francis's tomb the other day, and I did my job, I did my reporting, and I took a moment just to appreciate that setting and appreciate what he meant to me personally and to Catholics around the world. And also just here and there, I tried to put my phone away and stare at the smoke as it comes up and just take a moment to appreciate that I'm seeing this in person.
You're seeing it all there in person. Scott, thank you for the time. Great seeing you again.
Good to talk to you, Jeff. Bye.
Well, thanks to Scott Detrow, and now to our Morning Light panel and their reaction to not just things that are happening in Rome, but the larger state of the church around the world. Michael Geer, a new face on our panel this morning. Great to have you from the Pennsylvania Family Institute.
Good to be here.
I'm going to start with you, Michael. The idea of formality, all the smoke and the ancient tradition, the ritual, the robes, all of the curiosities that are represented in a movie like Conclave. Yeah. There is a real move away in many American churches away from that, even from the design of the church's architecture. What should be kept, and what can we learn from this process about what perhaps should remain as a part of the Christian faith?
Well, I think number one, as we're seeing and seeing those ancient sites and those sorts of things, or the St. Peter's and all of the rest, that we recognize that Christianity has been around for centuries, centuries, since the time Jesus came, millennia. And so we have things from the past that we should hold on to. Human beings sort of tend to drift. We look at society today and it's like, I don't like that tradition, I don't like those values and all those things, and we tend to throw things away. And there are strong, significant values that we should be looking to. When I think about the question of what are the important things, a couple of things that come to mind. One is Paul, the Apostle Paul, in Acts chapter 17, talking to the ancients in Athens and saying, I see all these things that you worship. I see the statues. I see all of these sorts of things. Let me introduce you to the true God. And that is the key. Hebrews 11 talks about those who come to God and who want to seek God must believe that he is and that he rewards those who seek him. So the things that we need to hold on to are the things that point us to God and introduce us to the one true God.
That's very helpful. And there's a wide degree of latitude, I guess, in expressions of our faith and how to get there. What do you look for? I'm going to talk to you as a dad this morning. When you're picking churches and picking traditions, and what traditions for your family, and how do you get to the gospel with your kids without it being just religion? What do you do?
I think that looking at churches, I come from a non-denominational background, give or take some years.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking for a Jesus church. Just that's my main criteria, is a church that prioritizes Christ, prioritizes that, and that the fluff around it, I don't care too much about. Like, I don't really care what the lobby looks like. I don't really care. I mean, I really like good music, so I do kind of care about that somewhat, but that's more like the icing on the cake for me. I care about a church that feels alive, but I also care about a church that respects the past. And, and I was convicted, a couple of years ago of this idea that me and probably everybody who's not thinking about it thinks that what you've found, the church you've found or you've started, is what Jesus meant in 33 AD. Like that the current worship, the current way you teach everything is what he meant back then. And he's finally happy because your church service is laid out the way it is, and worship comes before offering and all that. And convicted that I don't think it's about that. I think there's a little bit more play in the
Getting back to the essential.
Grace in it.
The essential person.
The essential person, yeah.
Take the last minute and land us when looking at this whole process, looking at your own church, your own ministry, and then people out there who are just like, I don't get any of it because none of it makes sense, and I don't know why you do this and you don't do that, and why your church sings this and doesn't sing that. Sure. People outside looking in, but just are curious about Jesus.
Sure. I think the central development for every church has to be a foundational piece built on the Apostles' Creed, the foundational pieces of what we believe. And once there, what we have all done is we've watched people add things in to that have complicated it or made it easier to live that out, one or the other. I think the pomp and circumstance has gotten to a place of complication. I think we've focused on something different. We've focused on how red is my robe, how do I have everything in the right place, versus is my heart in the right place? Rend your heart, not your garments, kind of idea. And so I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is that push toward what is it about your heart? And I think that's got to be fundamental for us as believers.
Gentlemen, thank you. A big day all over the world, but for Christians as we examine our own faith. So thank you very much. Well, coming up on Morning Light, words hold meaning and power when they are strung together strategically. Best-selling and award-winning author Laura Conaway shares the inspiration behind her love for writing and how her faith guides readers to the gospel. We'll be right back after the break.
Welcome back. Laura Conaway fell in love with writing at a young age. She's written 4 books. The newest book, Rescue Duty, was released in March. Laura is a best-selling and award-winning author who points her readers to Christ, saying if her story impacts only one person, it's worth it. Laura, thanks so much for being with us. Tell us, how did you become interested in writing?
Sure, thanks so much for having me, Deborah. So I have loved writing stories since I was a kid, but there was a pivotal moment in elementary school when we had an author visit, and we got to sit and to hear about this author and just their journey. And it was really encouraging when he gave us an opportunity to be able to write our own story during that assembly. And that gave me just the boost of confidence to see that this wasn't necessarily just a dream, but it could be something that could be a reality of stringing and crafting words together into a story that is compelling and that other people can find hopeful and encouraging to them.
And that is so interesting that one person makes such a big difference. So talk to us about your journey.
Absolutely, yeah. So my journey was not linear, and there were just so many different doors that God opened. And I started off by blogging, and so I did that in college and had some different opportunities there, and then pursued an education and professional writing degree and had the opportunity to write my first full-length novel in one of those classes. And that really gave me just I can do this. This is an actual thing that I've accomplished. And so that gave me the encouragement to be able to submit to a blind audition when a publishing company was looking for new authors and new story ideas, and submitted to that. And that opened the door for me to have my first book contracted and published, and then have had multiple books published by publishing companies.
Oh my goodness. So how many books have you written?
So I've written 4. 3 have been published so far.
And talk to us about the style of your books.
Sure. So they are all romantic suspense, Christian fiction. So we weave in the suspense thread with the faith aspect and how we can encourage and find inspiration through Christ for readers.
So talk to us about your latest book. It's Rescue Duty.
It is, yes. Rescue Duty is a story of found family through foster care. And what does it look like for us to find our forever family, whether we have blood relatives or not, and how Christ can bridge that gap through his blood, and how we are part of a greater and a bigger family through Jesus. And there's just themes of hope and redemption and second chances.
Talk to us about your other books, some of the topics that you've covered in those.
Absolutely. So Expired Vows is a firefighter rescue story, and that is one of facing suffering and hardship and how we can find hope and endurance in the midst of that. And Silencing the Witness is a witness protection program book, but the faith thread in that really focuses on how can we find Christ's strength in our weaknesses.
What type of difference do you hope you're making as a Christian author?
Yeah, I pray every day that I can point people closer to the gospel. And so the tagline for all of my books is Triumph Through Trials. So that just means how can we find triumph in Christ through the trials and the suffering and the hardships that we walk through in life. And so I pray that readers are able to see the characters endure in that, but how also the readers can find triumph in their own stories.
And by writing these stories, what type of difference is this making in your life?
Yeah, it is showing me just the beauty of persevering and being able to see this book storytelling as a community, as different readers are sharing their feedback with me. It is just encouraging to see that this is a journey that all of us are on together, and it's not just a one-person adventure.
Any ideas as far as your next book?
I am working with my agent on a book series that we are just waiting for the publishing houses to decide if they want, and just looking forward to those opportunities that are to come.
And can you give us a hint as far as the topics?
Yeah, so it is going to be about unreached people groups and what it looks like to share the gospel and to share hope with those who haven't heard that yet. Of course, we're going to add some suspense and some action into that to keep the readers on the edge of their seat.
Okay, Laura, we need to take a break, but we want to talk more about your faith journey. That's going to come up in our next segment.
Sure.
So stay with us. We will be back in 1 minute. Welcome back. We continue our conversation with award-winning author Laura Conaway. In our last segment, Laura shared how she fell in love with writing. Now she's sharing her faith journey. Laura grew up in a Christian home, but she did not grow in her walk with the Lord until she was diagnosed with a chronic illness. Laura, why don't you talk to us about your faith journey?
Absolutely. So I was privileged to grow up in a Christian home with loving parents who shared the gospel with me from a young age, and very early on decided that I wanted to make Christ my Savior. But I didn't fully understand what that meant until middle and high school, when the road, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And so how do we put our faith into action? So walking through a period of physical suffering and loneliness and just hardship, and seeing how Christ and our faith can become something in the hardships, and how our suffering, Christ understands that, and he is a compassionate, suffering servant who is empathetic and can comfort us. And so really seeing that I could run closer to Christ in the midst of hardship really allowed me to grow in my faith and to make it my own, and to see that this was something that I wanted to pursue.
And when we were talking earlier, you mentioned struggling and about a chronic illness. Why don't you share that with us?
Sure. So I have a condition called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. The short is POTS. And so this is a chronic illness under the dysautonomia umbrella. And so basically that just means that anything that my body does involuntarily, it has a hard time controlling. And so that could be things from your heart rate to your blood pressure and dizziness. And if I go from lying down to sitting to standing, that's going to look like my heart rate increases very quickly. I can feel like my blood pressure has dropped. I feel dizzy. I'll have fatigue and brain fog and a difficult time concentrating.
Oh my goodness, I've never heard of this. So how is it treated?
Yeah, so there are a couple of symptom management options. It's really great that it has grown in awareness over the past couple of years, as unfortunately more people have been diagnosed with it. But there really are just lifestyle changes. Each person's case is very different for what will best suit them, whether that is simple things such as wearing compression stockings or increasing electrolytes throughout the day to make sure that you stay hydrated. Each person will tweak what is needed for their body.
So how did your faith help you or strengthen your faith during this time?
Absolutely. So I saw just my weaknesses and my limitations in my human body, and what my body was supposed to be doing on its own, it can't always do. And so seeing how Christ is not limited, he is limitless, and he is my strength and my power when I am weak. And so seeing that I could rest in him and that he was someone who would comfort me in that.
And we had talked earlier about the struggles that you can be found in your book. So a lot of your characters go through struggles similar to you.
Absolutely, they do. And so my hope is that I'm able to share my personal experience as these characters journey in the story, but then also that will help readers to see that regardless of what they're walking through in life, that they can also find that endurance and perseverance, whether that is through physical suffering, whether that is through loneliness, whether that is a longing to belong somewhere, that they're able to connect with these characters and realize that there is hope for their own life.
And what reaction are you getting from viewers? What are you hearing from them?
It has been so encouraging to receive feedback, whether in emails or on social media, and so many have said that they've enjoyed the suspense of the stories, which I'm so grateful for. But more importantly, they have said that the faith aspect has just encouraged and strengthened their own journey. I recently just got an email from a reader who said that they had a very difficult family dynamic, and they said after reading my story, they were reminded that they could find hope in the midst of their hardship, and they just thanked me for that. And it's just encouraging to see how the gospel can be spread through these books.
Yeah, and what is your message to our viewers?
Absolutely. So my message is triumph through trials, that Christ is the victory, as in 1 Corinthians 15, 56 to 57. It says that praise be to God that Jesus Christ gives us the victory. And there is that hope and that triumph for all people.
Thank you so much for your doing, and certainly we'll be praying for you and while you're writing your next series of books.
Thank you very much.
And to learn more about Laura Conaway or to purchase one of her books, go to lauraconawayauthor.com. Stay with us. We're back right after the break. Welcome back. This is a live look from Vatican City. Black smoke billowed up through the Sistine Chapel early this morning as cardinals failed again to find a successor to Pope Francis after 2 more rounds of voting. A 2/3 majority, or 89 votes, is needed. 2 more votes are possible today. And coming up tomorrow morning, Light Sunday is Mother's Day. We first introduce you to Alexis Sneller with the PA Family Institute in September. She gave birth to a baby boy a few weeks later. She will share her journey as a first-time mom. Plus, Mother's Day is not all about flowers and breakfast in bed. In Latin America and Africa, there is fear, anxiety, and hopelessness for moms whose children are born with clubfoot. Learn how you can transform the life of a mom who doesn't know where help will come from. Hope Walks will be here to explain. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
Countdown to Mother's Day, and what a way to frame it up, Deborah. It's going to be an exciting show. Well, at the end of every program, I ask you to go check on your neighbors. It's a reminder for me too. Today might be a good day to check on the people next door or down the street from India or Pakistan. Reports from back home are pretty bleak this morning. India's military struck Pakistan in retaliation, they say, over the recent killing of tourists. Pakistan's defense minister says they're prepared for all-out war. And with nuclear capabilities, that's significant. India and Pakistan, that whole region of the world, are on the brink. Meanwhile, tonight, a friend of mine, thousands of miles from his home in Hyderabad, India, will walk across the stage here in Harrisburg to receive a master's degree. His thoughts and his parents will certainly be back home. But why should we care? Well, love your neighbor as you love yourself is in the Bible, and it's in red letters too. It's a big one. It's a command, but an encouragement. India, Pakistan, Lower Paxton Township, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Erie, our neighbors, wherever they are, need us. We're not bound by geography. For Deborah and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching today. Go check on your neighbors, and God willing, we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.